Welcome back. Today I'm speaking with two college students one-on-one about civility and what it means to them. The first student is from Olympia, but she attends the University of Arizona. She took some time to speak with me while visiting family during her summer break. Hi, I'm here with Delana. She's a student at University of Arizona and home on break, and so I was able to get some time in her very busy schedule to come in and chat with me about civility. So Delana, thank you very much for being here.
You're very welcome.
So what does civility mean to you?
Civility means to me having the care and attitude for others while maintaining a civil attitude, as the word would describe. But you need to have respect, most of all, for other people, not just what they say, but who they are as a person. Okay, so it's the care of somebody else other than you.
Yep. Care and respect of their opinions as well, rather than just yours.
How they act and respond to how maybe you do something. It's just overall making sure that there's respect between two people.
Now, you're interesting. You said the word respond. You didn't say react. And so when I think, well, let me ask you first.
Yeah.
What do you think the difference is between responding and reacting?
So the way I think about it is I work with horses, and so reacting is something that's much more sudden and quick to something that's maybe very harsh. Responding is in something that's in a much calmer way that you can have a conversation about rather than reacting to something almost aggressively.
So you're almost intentionally putting thought into a response rather than just reacting.
Yep.
A quick, shouting something out. And so when you're talking with someone whose views are different than your views on specific issues that might be important to you, how do you communicate with that person? Is it different than you communicate with someone else that agrees with you?
Yes, I think it is, because someone that you agree with, you can be very excited about it, and you want to just like almost finish their sentences because you're thinking a lot of the same thing. With someone that you may disagree with, you have to slow down and keep calm so that there is no reaction. It's a simple response back and forth, so that you're not screaming at each other about something whether it's what are we having for dinner, or your view on a politic, that you have to respond instead of react to what a statement is made.
So I'm presuming now, what you're saying or leading me to think is a response would beget a response, whereas a reaction will beget a reaction.
Yes.
And what I've seen in my career is when someone starts getting angry and shouts, the other person gets louder and tries to outshout, and then just escalates that way.
With getting the response, you're staying at a fairly neutral level, really calm and quiet. It's the same way when you work with the horses. You want them to stay at so that they're more open to a new idea rather than you hit that climax and then you're through the roof.
Interesting correlation between humans and animals, because we're all animals anyway, and sometimes we just jump right to the lizard brain.
Yeah.
And generally that doesn't always go well unless it's a fight for survival, of course. What would you say gets in the way of being civil towards somebody?
Sometimes it's just the difference of opinion. Some people believe that they are so right in what they think it is, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they choose to think they're so right and not respect somebody else's views. That may also be the case. I know I've had this experience when I was in high school during election years. Somebody would think that they are so correct in what they believe that they wouldn't be open to hearing somebody else's ideas. I know I would tend to stay quiet because people would think you are so wrong in what you believe, when in reality they just disrespected what I believed. They weren't open to hearing my opinions on the fact.
Okay, and was it to the extent where they're not just sharing with you their thoughts and opinions, they're trying to sway you to their side, they're trying to convince you otherwise?
They're telling me what I'm supposed to be believing as a white female in Washington State. They're saying, why do you believe that? That's not what you should be believing. Whereas, why do you believe what you believe? Maybe you can rationalize it for me. Maybe you can respond to me in a way that I understand where you're coming from.
Okay, and that goes back to what you were saying earlier when you first started off with respect. Respecting somebody else's views or opinions, while knowing that you have the rights to share your views and opinions respectfully with each other. Have you come across folks your age or any other age where you're not capable of changing their mind and they're not capable of changing the subject?
Changing the subject. I think so. I know, like, I will try and drop an issue because I'm not going to argue about it because I know we will never see eye to eye on it, but they keep pushing and pushing to try and essentially push my buttons and figure out where it's going to go. But there are people like that where they want to it's not that they want to disrespect, but they're doing it without knowing it. They're doing it without knowing that they've gone too far when you just want to drop the issue because you know you're not going to see eye to eye, and that's fine. It's fine not to believe the same thing or see the same ideas. That's how life works.
When they're trying to change your opinion or change your mind, at what point do they become uncivil? At what point would you define? Because I'm going to guess that there's a definition. That line is different for everybody.
There's definitely the line of uncivil. If you go back and forth and you're, again, responding calmly and trying to just rationalize with them what your thought process is, even if you don't want to talk about it anymore, usually the point it gets is after the second response, they start interrupting you. And you start getting louder and louder because you want to start talking over them. And then you yourself realize that you're not exercising civility in discussions and responses, and before you know it, you're both just screaming at each other because you're trying to get a word in edgewise. So it's usually that line that's crossed once you start getting interrupted and trying to finish their sentence of what they think that you should be believing, but you're still just trying to explain to them why it is the way you believe what you do. And that does get crossed quite often. Being at a university, like, you do see that a lot in just regular classes, whether it's with another student on an answer or with a professor on why it's an answer on a test. There's that line of you start interrupting each other, and then it just starts to escalate.
So it starts off, it sounds as if it starts off as a conversation, and you might be passionate, the other person's passionate about the issue, and then it escalates into emotions, start riling up, and then it's almost a shouting contest, and then it can end ugly. It could. Do you believe your thoughts and opinions are being heard by others, whether it be same age as you or older or younger? Teachers, whatever.
I have tried to create a respectable background where I will hear other people out and they'll hear me out, so that we have more of that civil discourse and response, so that we can go back and forth and go, hey, we agree on this or we disagree on that. And sometimes it matches up and sometimes it doesn't. And so to be able to, you slowly get a larger group of people that you can have these civil discussions with without it getting into a yelling contest. And having gone to a university in a different state has really allowed me to expand on that group, whether it be professors or friends or people that I was living with, just to really allow myself to really hear all ideas so that they could also hear my ideas, and so that it was a much bigger fish pond of what we could talk about.
Wonderful. Good description. And let me ask you, going back to some of your friends when you're having a differences of opinion, does it seem that it was less adding to the body of knowledge? Everybody has different views, and it was more just recruiting people to their side?
I think as I've gotten older and I've been able to see a couple more years of just discourse in general and different types of discourse, we've been able to better approach it when it does come about. When it happened in high school, people were still figuring out their views on things, and so you'd automatically just separate and alienate each other, and that was it. Once you're in college or at a university, or just you're in the workforce, you get more life experience, And so you're able to really expand on it. And it's not so much that they're recruiting. They may push a little harder, but they do it in a way where it's not disrespecting you to the extent that it was before.
Got it. Okay. I only have one or two more questions
Okay.
left, and that is, what can you do, or what suggestions do you have of me where I could be more civil? Any suggestions to bring about more civility in our world, at least at my level?
To bring more civility is just you start slow and you start small. I know in my family we practice just having civility within our family so that we can take that to our friends, to other families who maybe don't have as much civility. And so by that you're slowly building on that fishbowl of people being more civil to one another, and then you can take it to an even bigger level with your job, and you can be more civil with your coworkers, and then they can take that home to their families. And it's this slow building of a tree that you move civility around in a community.
And it seems like you keep going right back to mutual respect, respecting others' opinions.
Yes.
While still having the confidence to speak your own mind,
Yes.
your own opinion. Any final thoughts?
Civility is something that I try and exercise regularly. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but that's part of learning from it, is you take those learning experiences and you take them back to be able to practice civility.
Well, I've known you for a couple of years,
Yes.
and I have to say you are exceedingly well-spoken.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate it, and our future is in good hands.
Thank you.
Delana, thank you very much for spending the time here with me during your summer.
No problem.
Next, I'm speaking with a student from the Evergreen State College. Between her career and her work at earning a master's in public administration, she is exceedingly busy. Fortunately for us, she was able to find some time to share her thoughts on civility. Today I'm here with Sarah DeVell, and she's an MPA student at the Evergreen State College. Go Gooey Ducks.
Gooey Ducks.
And we're here to talk about civility. Sarah, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I just told you why we're here. Why is civility an important topic to talk about?
I think that civility is really important for our everyday lives in order for us to be able to communicate with each other and have difficult conversations regardless of the topic. We need to be able to be civil so that the other person can actually hear what we're saying instead of get really defensive. We need to be civil so that so that other people don't feel like we're attacking them in our opinions.
Yeah, you mentioned in having difficult topics.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with someone that, in your perception, that they are being uncivil,
Right.
Or incapable of being civil, incapable, does that mean you don't talk about those subjects? You just don't even bring them up?
I think it really depends on the setting and who the person is. Sometimes with people that we're close to, it can be easier to not have certain topics, but if you work with somebody and you have to have those topics, you're going to have to learn how to work with them. I think it's important to not take things personally if somebody is being aggressive in their communication style, but also not reacting to their aggressiveness is really important. Although it can be very hard to do, and I am definitely at fault of occasionally doing that myself, I think it's really important that we always try to maintain that civility in our conversations, because as soon as we start not being civil, I think we lose all of our ability to be understood by other people.
Interesting. You use the word react.
Right.
As opposed to respond.
Right.
And what do you think is the difference?
I think that responding means that you are taking a second and critically analyzing why you're saying something and how you're saying it, versus reacting is to just, it's a more instinctual response, and it just happens instead of critically stopping and thinking about why am I saying this, and am I saying it because I'm upset.
So it takes a certain amount of discipline, self-discipline, and emotional intelligence, perhaps not to take it personally.
Absolutely. And that awareness to know when you're taking it personally. Sometimes it's hard to stop and check your own emotions in the middle of a conversation and be like, oh, I'm actually really upset about that right now. Didn't even realize.
Especially one of those hot button topics.
Absolutely.
That are that are prevalent in media today.
Right.
So what you've described all the way around it. How would you describe civility? What does that mean, being civil? What's that mean?
I think that it means not attacking people. I think that it means being open to listening to what other people have to say, as well as critically analyzing how you're saying what you're saying and why you're saying it. I think it's really important. Like, civility is just being able to communicate with somebody without being aggressive and without like putting somebody down in that conversation. And yeah, I think it's all about, just trying to listen and hear people and those active listening traits that seem to be pretty popular right now.
Yeah, active listening, very much so. 'Cause you're listening with the intention, hopefully, to understand.
Yes.
You're not listening to the other person and coming up with all the questions or arguments contrary.
Right. Right.
Do you find when you're talking with someone, friends, whomever, that they don't really want a dialogue about a topic? They're more interested in convincing you that they are right and you need to change your opinion on
Yeah,
something.
definitely. Social media is probably the biggest instance of those things happening. And it's really hard because, I have done that myself in a few instances, but it's really hard to have a conversation with somebody about that, because if you have a different opinion and you want them to just be able to hear that opinion, it doesn't ever seem like they're really hearing it. They're just telling you about why they think what they do, instead of saying, oh, maybe I do understand where you're coming from. Being able to relate to the person is really important, to be able to actually understand where they're coming from and actually do that active listening that is important for conversations to be civil.
I learned that so many years ago regarding social media.
Right.
That not everybody has the right to my opinion.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's just better left unsaid.
I totally agree.
What do you think would be some byproducts to being civil?
More understanding. I think that we would be able to compromise and work together more in these especially turbulent of political times. So I think that being civil is the most important key to communication, especially in the political arena, but in daily life as well, because civility will allow us to be able to work together. It will allow us to be able to understand each other, and that fundamental understanding of different people's lives or different people's opinions is what's going to be able to lead to much better policies that are going to hopefully mitigate unintended consequences and just work for people better in their everyday lives. If we don't have that understanding, then policy most likely is going to be written with only one framework implemented into that policy, instead of being able to understand multiple different opinions and frameworks that are out there and trying to incorporate all of those into a policy solution. So that's just the political arena.
But it sounds also as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you are also describing by eliminating other points of view and perspectives, you're just buying into groupthink.
Right.
I'm going to hang out with people that think the same way, like the same things, and discount everything else that doesn't apply or that I don't agree with.
Absolutely. I definitely think that happens way too frequently, and I do see that in my everyday life. And I do understand that it can be hard to, be friends with or work with somebody that has fundamentally different opinions than you do, but I do think that most of the time there is a huge arena and area for us to be able to work together and find common ground, and that most of us on this planet actually do want to see a better world for each other, and being able to start from some commonality, some common ground is really, really important to those conversations.
So those are the positive consequences of being civil with each other. What is the antithesis of being civil? What comes of that?
Right. So if we are never civil in our interactions with each other, I think that it's going to mean that, we're never able to understand where each other are coming from. We're never going to be able to understand somebody else's life and their life experiences, because we're so quick to discount, everything that they are saying and saying, well, they just think that because of blah, blah, blah. instead of critically analyzing why it is that they think something. So if we're not civil with each other, I think that we're not going to have very many friends, probably.
It closes relationships.
Absolutely. We're not going to be able to grow our relationships with others unless you find some people that think exactly the same way that you do, which is pretty hard to do in life today.
And with communication, that's like the breakdown in families, in friendships, between countries, all the way up. Communication is critical. How would you promote, or how do you promote more civility in today's world and in your interactions?
By practicing it, by practicing civility constantly. I feel like leading by example is the best way to do it. I wish that I could go out there and tell everybody that the most important thing for them to do is to just be civil towards other people, but I don't have that kind of ability to promote reach like that and tell everybody that. But I really do think it's very important for us to be able to move through a lot of these problems that we are seeing in today's age, and in order for us to be able to come together and work towards solutions, we have to be able to have difficult conversations, and being civil is the only way to have those conversations, because if we can't be civil with each other, then we're never going to be able to work together and get anything done, and there's so much to do. Okay.
You said mentoring for others, and I wanted to mention that we role model our behavior
Right.
to our peers,
Yeah.
to people older than us, and even younger than us. And everybody's a role model.
Right.
It's just some are better than others. Sometimes you see a role model and say, that's exactly who I don't want to be. I don't want to be like that individual at
Right.
all.
Absolutely.
And so by role modeling, you are role modeling good, proper, positive
Yeah.
etiquette, if you will,
Right.
in social discourse with someone else that may have a difference of opinion. Generally, it's not an issue when it's someone that you agree with.
Right. And also knowing, when to not engage too. I think that's a big part of it.
Smart.
You can't always have every difficult conversation that you want to have. If somebody's screaming on Facebook, probably best to just not comment in response. But if you're having a difficult conversation with somebody in real life, I think that just practicing civility, even if they're getting really heated, knowing when to say, hey, maybe we should talk about this another time,
Right,
when we have
right.
more time, or when we can both cool off. Being able to do little things like that, and just making sure that you as a person are always being civil. It's probably the only thing that you really can do.
Know when to cut and run. But you also
Very
said
important.
Early on, you said about you have to know yourself.
Yeah.
So you need to know yourself and be confident enough to say, you know what, internally, I'm not getting anywhere with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to disengage somehow.
Yeah.
And that's
Self-awareness.
emotional intelligence as well.
Right.
Without being rude or mean about it, just find out a way to end it and move on.
It's a lot of mindfulness and self-awareness, and being able to pick up on the emotions of people
Yeah.
around you.
So what suggestions do you have, if any additional ones, for me to be more civil? Not that I'm not civil, but we're always working on it. Any suggestions for other leaders, community leaders, nonprofits, organizations, it doesn't matter. What suggestions do you have for others?
Ask a lot of questions, be curious, always, try to understand people and understand where they're coming from. I really think that, if you disagree with somebody, the most important thing that you can do is learn why, and, explore that to the best of your ability. So asking questions and always staying curious, I think it's actually, I read about this in a grad school textbook recently, and I just thought it was really important. Mindfulness and awareness of yourself. I think that you can only be as civil as you have the personal growth to be able to be.
Yeah.
So.
And you said something really smart. You said a lot of smart stuff. And that was ask questions, asking clarifying questions,
Yeah.
because everybody has a story. Everybody has their own story, and we don't know what that story is. We don't know what their history is, their education, their experiences, personal or professional. We don't know. Unless you're asking clarifying questions that might lead you to understand why. I wonder why they think this way, or I wonder
Right.
why they have this opinion on this topic, and engage them. Then you can start seeing it from their perspective, or from their. You may not agree or with their opinion, but you
Right.
can understand why do they think that. Now I understand. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
What happened to them growing up? What happened to them politically in the 50s or 60s or 30s? Because you have that historical perception or perspective from their eyes, and that might help you, like you said, a greater awareness and some commonalities, but respecting them and listening to what they have to say.
Yeah, and for you as a policymaker, I think that's extremely important that you can at least understand what happened in people's lives to get them to the position that they currently hold. And so even if it doesn't change your opinion, maybe it changes the way that you implement something to be more sensitive to that new understanding that you gained.
You're very canny. Sarah DeVell, thank you so much for coming in. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. To help make sense of everything we've learned about civility the last 2 weeks, I've put together a panel of community leaders. You won't want to miss what they have to say, so be sure to tune in next week for the final episode of our 3-part series on civility.